The cameras flashed, the crowd froze. And, just like that, Hollywood had a completely new obsession. Because the headline everyone is talking about is this. After 20 years together, Grey's Anatomy's Chyler Leigh has filed for divorce.
I mean, it is the kind of headline that literally just stops you in your tracks.
Oh, absolutely. Welcome to Starscope Report. Join Jordan and Jamie as they uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals.
From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
And today, we are doing a deep dive into a story that honestly completely defies everything we expect from a celebrity breakup. Like, there is no explosive scandal here.
Which is, it's so rare because we are practically trained by society to look for the tabloid drama, right? We want the leaked text messages or the dramatic public unfollowing on Instagram.
Right. Society treats the end of a marriage like a sudden impact event, like a car crash we all get to rubberneck.
Exactly. The narrative of, we just grew apart is almost never accepted because it doesn't sell magazines. People want debris.
They want a villain and a victim. But we gathered a really diverse stack of sources for this deep dive. We're talking vintage clips from Extra TV, retrospective interviews from The Advocate, and some fascinating pop culture relationship archives. And looking through all of this, the relationship between Chyler Leigh and her husband Nathan West didn't explode in scandal, it evolved.
And honestly, exploring that evolution gives us a much rarer and I think a much more useful phenomenon to analyze. It forces us to ask, what happens when two people actually do the hard work of untangling a life together with real intention?
It really does. So just for context, they have quietly separated after 24 years of marriage and 26 years together as a couple.
Which, in the entertainment industry, is practically geological time. I mean, it spans multiple eras of their lives and careers.
Yeah, so our mission today isn't to rehash gossip, because, frankly, there isn't any. We want to trace this from a casting room in 1998 all the way to a very quiet podcast confession in 2026, because you'll see how shared trauma and shifting identities and this incredible blending of their art and real life led to one of the most self-aware splits we've ever seen.
It's a brilliant case study in how the foundation of a relationship dictates its entire trajectory.
Okay, so let's start at that foundation. Because according to Variety and other pop culture archives, their origin story feels like a movie script.
Yeah.
It is 1998. They are at an audition in LA for a WB pilot called Saving Graces.
Okay. Setting the scene.
Yeah. And Chyler is just 16 years old. Nathan is 19.
I mean, think about the immense crushing pressure of being a teenager in the late 90s Hollywood machine, navigating that adult world with zero psychological protection.
Oh, for sure. And the archives give us this incredibly vivid scene. So Chyler walks into the waiting room. There are 4 guys auditioning for the same role. 3 of them are in chairs, and Nathan is the only one literally sitting on the floor.
I love that detail. It's so specific.
Right, and Chyler said in interviews that the second she saw him sitting right there on the ground, she had this visceral sensation. She just knew instantaneously that he was the guy she was going to marry.
Wow. Which, from a developmental psychology standpoint, especially for teenagers from unstable environments, that lightning strike attachment isn't always just romance. It's a profound subconscious seeking of safety.
Like her brain was saying, oh, there is my anchor.
Exactly. You spot someone and your nervous system registers them as a safe harbor.
Well, that anchor dropped fast because they actually shared their very first kiss during that audition.
Wait, really? Right there?
Yes. And it wasn't some private hallway moment. They had their first kiss on film in front of 27 network executives.
Oh my God, that is intense.
I know. And later on, Nathan actually proposed to her on the set of Not Another Teen Movie. So on the surface, it's this glossy, perfect, late 90s Hollywood fairy tale.
Yeah, it sounds like a dream.
But digging into their interviews, things were significantly darker behind the scenes. Underneath that sheen, both of them were dealing with severe family trauma. And early in their relationship, they were both struggling deeply with drug addiction.
Which completely reframes that waiting room meet cute.
Yeah.
They weren't just 2 starry-eyed actors. They were 2 highly vulnerable, traumatized teenagers who found each other in the middle of a literal storm.
Right. And wait till you hear how that foundational trauma actually set the stage for the end of their marriage decades later.
It is such a massive twist. And hey, if you're loving these Hollywood twists, make sure you're subscribed. We've got even crazier stories ahead.
We really do. So, going back to their struggles, they eventually credited a Christian church service with helping them break free from their addictions, which obviously changed their lives.
They essentially co-regulated to survive. They literally saved each other's lives.
Yeah, but knowing that their origin is rooted in survival, I keep coming back to an analogy. If you build your early relationship like a life raft to survive a shipwreck, the addiction, the broken families, what happens when you finally paddle to dry land 15 years later?
That is the perfect question.
Right. Does a bond forged in survival inherently have to shift?
Yes, and the transition is incredibly complex. In clinical terms, we look at the difference between a trauma bond, which is based on mutual survival, and a growth bond.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, a trauma bond is powerful. You're keeping each other alive. But the foundation of a life raft is solely designed to keep you from drowning. It's not architecturally designed to serve as a permanent house on the shore.
Because the materials are different. The purpose is different.
Precisely. When a relationship's core utility has been survival, transitioning it into a space of individual growth requires fundamentally changing the rules of the marriage. And untangling a bond where someone saved your life carries this massive weight of loyalty.
So how do you even begin to build that house on the shore? Well, moving into the 2000s and 2010s, the interviews show them doing what a lot of people who lacked a stable childhood do. They aggressively built one.
Yeah, they got married in 2002.
Exactly. And they had 3 kids, Noah, who is now 23, Taelyn, who's 19, and Anniston K, who is 17.
And they were actively trying to rewrite their own family narratives. Chyler has been very open about the fact that she was estranged from her own family when she had Noah at just 21.
She leaned entirely on Nathan's family, right?
She did. She described them as wonderful. They were laying bricks, trying to build a fortress of stability they never had.
And there's this really fun detail from the sources that illustrates how they went about building that fortress. They had this baby naming pact. The rule was whoever correctly guessed the baby's sex got the naming rights.
A high-stakes guessing game. I love that.
So when Chyler was pregnant with Noah, she guessed it was a boy, so she chose his first name, and Nathan picked the middle name. But Nathan correctly guessed the sex for both of their daughters, so he got to name Taelyn and Anniston.
On the surface, it's just a cute anecdote. But psychologically, for two people whose parents failed to provide structure, creating a strict, playful rule for something as monumental as naming their kids is a mechanism for establishing safe control.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about it like that.
Yeah, it replaces the chaos of their childhoods with fairness and collaboration. It says, we have rules here, and our rules are safe and joyful.
And that collaboration bled right back into their art. If you dig into their musical collaborations, they started a band together called East of Eli. Nathan was writing the music, but he was writing songs explicitly to guide their kids through different life stages.
Right, there's a track called Child's Play and another one called Glow.
Exactly. He wrote Child's Play for Noah when he was heading into 8th grade as a roadmap for puppy love. And Glow was for Taelyn to help her celebrate her differences. And what really stood out to me is that Chyler is actually featured as a singer on these tracks.
Didn't she say she found singing absolutely terrifying?
She did. She admitted that in an interview. But she did it because she felt entirely safe taking that risk alongside her husband.
Which just speaks to the absolute bedrock of trust between them. He was her safe harbor.
But I'm looking at the structure they've built, and it's massive. They are co-stars, co-parents, bandmates. Their identities are so enmeshed, like a massive Jenga tower of shared life.
So how do you pull out a single block without the whole thing collapsing?
Exactly. And later in the episode, we'll talk about the shocking catalysts that forced them to pull that exact block.
Seriously, stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next, because it's a massive turning point.
It really is. So we get to 2020, and this perfectly sealed ecosystem faces a profound reckoning, because Chyler Leigh publicly came out. And the mechanism of how she came out is absolutely fascinating.
It's one of the most compelling examples of art imitating life that I've ever seen.
She published a deeply personal letter on the Create Change website. She explained how playing her character on the show, Supergirl Alex Danvers, forced her to confront her own sexual identity.
Because her character was given a coming out storyline, right?
Yes. And Chyler wrote about how filming those scenes physically affected her. She described her heart feeling like it was going to beat completely out of her chest during takes.
Oh, man.
Yeah, because the dialogue she was speaking as a character was actually echoing her own hidden reality in real life.
She was safely embodying a truth on a soundstage that she hadn't fully integrated into her actual life yet. The body literally reacts because that artificial boundary between the character and the self is dissolving in real time.
But, acknowledging that reality came with a severe cost. In a retrospective piece in The Advocate, the fallout is laid bare. Following her character's storyline and her own coming out, conservative friends and family members began to distance themselves.
Leaving them completely outcast.
Right. Chyler described it as a long and lonely road for both my husband and myself.
Wait, she said for both my husband and myself.
Yes. Which is wild because usually the narrative we see in pop culture is that when someone comes out in a long-term heterosexual marriage, the spouse feels utterly betrayed, they lawyer up, and there's this explosive split.
Exactly. That is the societal script. But Nathan defied it entirely. Just consider the profound weight of what he did. She is navigating this massive shift in her sexual identity, which inherently alters the romantic parameters of their marriage. And he is standing shoulder to shoulder with her.
He chose to absorb the loss of their community and weather the social exile right alongside her.
He chose to be an outcast with her. That foundational respect, that trauma-forged loyalty of protecting each other against the world, it remained entirely intact. He protected her during her most vulnerable transition.
It proves their bond had evolved way beyond the traditional confines of a marriage. They weren't just spouses anymore, they were kin.
Absolutely.
And I have to admit, that gives me chills, because it completely dismantles our expectations, and it sets the stage for the final chapter of this timeline, which brings us to May 2026.
The announcement.
Yeah, and it didn't come via a sterile PR statement or a leaked court document on TMZ. It came during Tyler's appearance on the Books That Changed My Life podcast. She revealed they had quietly separated.
Which is such a thoughtful, deliberate setting for a revelation of that magnitude. It allows for nuance.
And listening to the transcript, what strikes me most is the total absence of a singular dramatic breaking point. There was no big fight. She just noted that what they both wanted simply wasn't lining up anymore.
That slow drift is often much harder to navigate than a sudden rupture. When there's no obvious villain, the decision to leave is incredibly agonizing.
But she admitted the tension was there. She called it abundantly apparent. And crucially, she realized the kids were picking up on it. This ambient tension was shifting the mood of the whole house.
Kids always pick up on the ambient tension.
Always. And this is where she drops what I think is the most important insight of this entire story. Reflecting on their childhood, Chyler said, he went through a lot of trauma with his family. I went through a lot of trauma with my family. So we're just perpetuating that cycle. And so it was like, okay, we have to make a choice.
That insight is staggering. They recognize that the very mechanism they built to escape their childhood trauma, their marriage, was now generating the exact same kind of ambient tension that traumatized them as kids.
They built the house on the shore, but now the roof was leaking, and they realized the kids were getting wet.
That's a perfect way to put it. They realize that staying together for the kids is often the complete fallacy. Sometimes forcing a misaligned marriage to continue is the exact thing that harms the children the most.
So by choosing to end the marriage amicably, they actively chose to save the family's peace.
They dismantled the romantic infrastructure so carefully that the family structure remains standing.
And in this beautiful, poetic, full-circle moment, art steps in to heal her once again. Just like Supergirl catalyzed her coming out, her current show, Hallmark's The Way Home, is acting as her catharsis.
The parallels she describes between her character and her real life are uncanny.
On the show, she plays a character going through a divorce after a long marriage, raising a teenage daughter, and dealing with an estranged mother. Chyler told the podcast host that it was super weird how her real life was simultaneously happening on screen.
Wow.
Yeah. And she mentioned that Andie MacDowell, who plays her mother on the show, became this incredible maternal figure for her off-screen while she navigated the divorce.
It reinforces this theme where performance and reality are constantly in conversation for her. The art provides a safe framework to process her messy real life.
So bringing all of this together, what does this actually mean for us? For the listener trying to make sense of relationships in a society that loves strict binaries, we are taught that a marriage is either forever, which equals success, or it ends in divorce, which equals a failure. We offer pity the moment we hear the news.
Right. We view the sheer length of a relationship, specifically whether it lasts until death,
Yeah.
as the sole metric of its validity.
But look at the evidence we just unpacked. If a relationship spans 26 years, if it heals the agonizing wounds of your youth, if it literally pulls you out of drug addiction,
Yeah.
if it brings 3 children into the world, if it supports you through the terrifying process of confronting your sexual identity, and if it ultimately ends in mutual respect, specifically to protect your children from trauma, is that a failure?
I don't think it is. Which brings us to a concept that challenges everything we've been taught. We have a term for a starter marriage,
Yeah.
right? A brief union when you're young. But we don't have a term for what this is. What if we view this as a healer marriage?
Oh, wow, I am fascinated by that. A healer marriage.
What if the subconscious purpose of their union was never actually to last until they were 80? What if its purpose was to save 2 drowning teenagers, help them build a secure foundation, raise a family in peace, and then once they were both fully healed, release them into their true individual selves?
If a relationship does exactly what it was designed to do, if it saves you and then sets you free, we desperately need a better vocabulary than the word failure.
Completely.
That completely upends the metric of forever. A life raft isn't a failure just because you eventually step off it onto dry land. It completed its mission.
That is exactly it.
So the next time you hear about a long-term relationship coming to an end, maybe don't immediately scan the horizon for the villain or wait for the explosion. Look for the evolution and ask yourself, did this relationship fail, or was its purpose just beautifully, completely finished?
Such a powerful thought to leave on.
You've been listening to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture.
Thanks for tuning in. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.